Views expressed by CamaPlan podcast guests may not reflect those of CamaPlan. CamaPlan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. CamaPlan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Welcome back to the road to financial freedom, where experts share stories and secrets to unlocking financial independence. This podcast is brought to you today by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator focused on educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. I'm Ricky Trong, CamaPlan team member and podcast host. And in each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at the many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each of our guests. Today's guest is originally from Long Island, New York, and currently living in Ewa Beach, Hawaii. He served in the U.S. Navy for over 20 years. He's a licensed real estate associate, financial coach, real estate investor, and a podcast host. When he was nearing the end of his career in the Navy, he shifted his focus to financial independence and entrepreneurship. He started investing in real estate and working other side hustles to create a passive income and became financially independent by the age of 38. He owns real estate in Hawaii, Virginia, Oregon, and Texas. He's the host of Average Joe Finances podcast, a top 1% internationally ranked podcast, and he started Average Joe Finances to share with his guests, as well as his own adventures in becoming financial independent. Mike's mission is to provide relevant and informative content that will help others in their own financial independence journey. His goal is to help you beat debt, build your wealth, and control your future. Now, from the source directly, let's hear about his journey. I have Mike Cavaggioni here on our podcast. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Hey, Ricky, I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
I am super excited to have you on. You are doing everything. You got a lot going on for you.
I dabble.
I see. Yeah. So why don't you, I gave you a pretty in-depth bio there, but give us some of the key points, where you started, how, financial really impacted your life and how you want to help others. Tell us the background.
Sure, absolutely. So like you said, I'm originally from Long Island, New York, currently living in Ewa Beach, Hawaii. The W's pronounced as a V here in Hawaii. And actually, Hawaii is actually pronounced Hawaii, right? So a lot of people don't know that. It's little things. But yeah, so I'm living out here in Ewa Beach, Hawaii. I love it. It's a beautiful area. I love living in Hawaii. It was kind of like one of those lifelong dream things. So when I got the opportunity to come out here, I jumped on it. So I just retired from the Navy after 20 years of service. And like you said, I'm a licensed realtor associate. So that's what I'm doing right now full time. But the beautiful part is I don't have to chase a commission because I've reached a point of financial independence from my real estate investments, my side hustles, as well as my pension that I got from serving in the military. Wow. Now, rewinding back when it comes to how I originally got into real estate is my uncle kind of put this bug in my ear a long time ago. He was working for the state of New York, and he was buying rental properties. He was buying small multifamily, like duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes in upstate New York. And I remember, asking him hey, why are you buying these homes that you got to take care of? And whatever. I was young. I was in my, young teenage years and just curious about why he was doing that. He said, you know what, Michael, when I retire from the state, he's like, I don't want to work anymore. I want to drive around and go collect rent. He's like, that's what I want my job to be. And guess what he's doing now that he retired from the state? He's driving around and he's collecting rent. And whenever he needs, if he wants to cash stuff out, he just sells a property, and because they're all paid off. He's been doing this over, 20, 30 year period. So, all these, for the most part, all these properties are paid off. And if he ever needs to pull any emergency cash out, he could always take out a HELOC, do a cash out refinance. There's all these options to get the money tax free as well, which is, to me, was just kind of oh, this is kind of bonkers. This is a good way to go. So that bug has always been in the back of my head. Fast forward to when I was 23 years old, I bought my first house in 2007. So we all know what happened the very next year. Yes, it did hurt. So I wound up buying this house in Waynesboro, Virginia, beautiful area, Shenandoah Valley, really nice. I was on recruiting duty at the time, but I had just got orders to go back to Norfolk, Virginia, and I wanted to keep my family together. I was going on a ship, I was deploying. So my wife and one kid at the time, went to New York to stay with family while I was deployed, and then we came back and moved in together in Virginia Beach. Now, during this time frame, I had to rent the place out because I couldn't sell it. I was so underwater with the house. I bought it for 250,000 2.5 years earlier. At the time, it was like 2009 time frame, and the price I could sell it at was about 158 ish. So yeah, not in a good spot. So I was renting it out and I was losing $300 a month, but it was the best I could do to try to keep that property and keep my family together in Virginia Beach. So fast forward a little bit more, I had to short sell the property, right? So had my VA loan. I thought I completely lost it. Again, during that time frame, while I was trying to keep the property and keep my family together in the apartment, I had amassed about $28,000 in credit card debt, a couple personal loans that if I add it all up, I mean, we're over $50,000. It was kind of ridiculous. So we came up with a plan because we knew that after my next deployment that we were going to push to go to Hawaii, right? So we okay, we got a 2-year period to make this happen. So we started, we looked at Dave Ramsey's baby steps. We started doing that and just paying off all of our consumer debt. We did the whole debt snowball thing, turned that sucker into an avalanche and just started crushing it. Then we started doing the envelope system where, okay, like as soon as we got paid, we split our paycheck up into these different envelopes. And, this is what went to those different funds. Everything else went to debt, right? And that's what we did. So during that 2-year time frame, before we moved to Hawaii, we not only paid off all that debt, but we also saved $40,000 that we had sitting in the bank account ready to go when we moved in. So, okay, I was like, I got money for renovations if I need it because I'm going to use a VA loan again to buy this property. Well, we get to Hawaii and the lender tells me you don't qualify for the VA loan anymore because you short sold your last home and you've lost your eligibility. And unless you pay $67,000, you're not getting it back. And I said, whoa, hang on. Nobody ever told me any of that stuff. I knew that there was an issue with the short sale, but the VA guarantee was, is what covered the rest. But I didn't know that I was going to lose it. So anyway, they said, well, let's go ahead and just process the paperwork and see what it looks like. So they go through and they push everything through to the VA. The VA comes back and says, hey, his previous lender didn't file the paperwork on time. They filed it a day late. So he did not lose his eligibility. Here's his certificate of eligibility. So somebody was looking out for me. So that worked out. So long story short, we got our house in Hawaii. And now I had money to do renovations. And we did. We gutted the kitchen. We did a whole bunch of stuff. And this whole time period, real estate was not even a thought in my mind for investing purposes. I just knew I wanted to buy a piece of paradise, right? So I run back into some buddies of mine that I was on the Theodore Roosevelt with way back in the day, and they were investing in real estate, and they were doing it for a while. And when I talked to them, they were at like 28 doors or whatever, and we just started having a conversation. And it put that bug in my ear again, like it's that little spot in my brain where this was sitting just came back, and I said, okay, I think I want to take another look at this and maybe try this again. So I started going to real estate meetups and I was meeting other investors. And that's when I realized, hey, I should go get my real estate license and do referrals on the side so I can increase my cash flow and take this money and invest it. And that's what I did. So I started looking at all these different ways to build my income up to invest in real estate. And we find these deals. I go to my friends and I said, hey guys, look, this is what we found. And all this time, like my wife's still like on the fence because she remembers what happened, with our last property. And she's like, I don't know. So we take this and we go to our friends, we have lunch, and basically they showed her their portfolio and then talked about why the deals that I found, why they were good deals, right? So she's like, okay, you know what? Let's give it a try. So we jumped in, we bought a duplex back in Chesapeake, Virginia. We closed on it in February of 2020. I'm giving you these key dates, right? February of 2020. What happened the next month? It felt like destiny that we should not invest in real estate because it was like punch after punch in the face. So yeah, the very next month, March of 2020, the world effectively ended. I had a tenant that lost a job, couldn't pay their rent. Thank goodness my downstairs tenant was Section 8 and that their rent covered my mortgage at least. So at least that was covered. I was still paying the property manager out of pocket. But anyway, I'll kind of fast forward on that one too, because I do get long winded with this story. But yeah, so fast forward, by the end of the year, I got the tenant that had lost his job. I got him signed up with this rent repayment program that actually back paid all the rent that he owed and the late fees. And then I listed the property on the market, and I sold it a year after I bought it for a $16,000 profit. So $16,000 more than what I paid for it. And at the same time, by the time I got the check from his owed rent, we wound up cash flowing on the property for that year, $950 a month. So all in all, it turned out to be a pretty decent investment, but a lot of headaches involved with that. But that kind of reaffirmed to me that, hey, real estate is where I want to be. So I took the profits from that, invested it in a multifamily syndication, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So I'm currently in 3 syndication deals, one in Roanoke, Virginia, one in Monmouth, Oregon, and one in Wakachiki, Texas, which is right outside of DFW. That's kind of the long story short, but still kind of long version of how I got back into real estate.
Oh, wow. That's a great story. It really comes, take a deep breath, take some coffee. It's 6 hours earlier for Mike today. He's, in Hawaii and we're here in Pennsylvania. So yeah, he's in the morning and I just, finished lunch and I'm about to have my afternoon nap when we're done here. So,
all right. A siesta.
Yeah. Right. But no, that's so interesting. It came full circle to you. You started out as a young guy, understanding real estate and having that bug. And then it came back to you years later. And especially during such a hard time for all of us, the evil C word that we don't like to talk about. I actually had a similar situation where I was working for a company and I had to be closer. So we purchased the house April of 2020. And 2 weeks later, the entire state of Pennsylvania shut down and we couldn't even furnish the house or do anything. We were living in like a shell. Honestly, like we had lawn chairs in our living room as furniture.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, I had to have enough for my family that came to visit. So I totally understand. But yeah, that's actually my real estate journey at this point is that I no longer work for that company. It wasn't a valuable asset to drive up to all the time because it was pretty far from where our family is. So we rented it out and we have great cash flow from it now, and that's kind of the bug for me and why I want to do this podcast is I want to learn more. I want to hear about these experiences that all these guests are having. And, it's very similar for you that you are finding your way through financial freedom. And you came onto this podcast before we even started recording and said, oh, retirement's crazy. Like, I don't even know what time of the day it is. Like, you're not, you're just living the dream, I feel like. And, and that's the thing a lot of our listeners want to aspire to is how to do that. So you have a company that you call Average Joe's Finances. It's your podcast. What kind of things do you do with that company? Do you teach clients different ways to invest, or tell me a little bit about Average Joe's?
Like you said earlier, when you described me with my bio and everything. So I started Average Joe Finances to share my story originally as a blog, right? So I was starting this off to share my story in financial independence, right? Then it turned into the podcast. And now I'm sharing my story as well as the guests that come on my show, sharing what they're doing in their own adventures in becoming financially independent. So for the most part, I've had a lot of real estate investors on, but I've had several other people that are doing things through crypto, Bitcoin and all that, which I still don't know enough about. And it's one of the things that I like about my podcast is I get to learn about these things. That's one of the things I still have a really hard time learning about. But also, the stock market, individual stocks, ETFs, index funds. So I've had a lot of people come on and talk about what they do, for their own ways of building financial independence. And I've had some people from the FIRE movement come on. I like FIRE. I just don't like the RE part. So yeah, when I said I was retired earlier, I don't really consider myself retired. I just consider myself financially independent. And now I get to do what I want to do and not have to worry about the, can I pay my bills? Well, yes, I can, because I've got enough passive income coming in to do that. But yes, so Average Joe Finances is also, I also do financial coaching. And one of the things I coach my clients on is not only to get rid of their consumer debt, but also to leverage their debt to their advantage, right? So I'll give you an example of one of the things I do myself is I do velocity banking, where, I take my HELOC and I use my HELOC basically to pay all my bills, to pay off whatever debt I have, and then also to chunk down my mortgage. And then all the income that I have coming in, all the passive income, any active income, anything like that, my real estate commissions, all of that comes in and goes right back into paying off the HELOC. And I do this rinse and repeat cycle. And then, in a couple months, I'm going to go to the bank and say, hey, look, you can see I paid down 100K off my mortgage. I'd like to raise my line of credit on my HELOC to, another 100,000, please. And they'll say, oh, yes, Mr. Cavaggioni, I can see you paid it down another 100,000. Here you go. Here's your new line of credit. And just keep rinse and repeating that probably till I get my house about halfway paid down. For me, it's I like the liquidity. I don't want to necessarily pay my house off really, really early because I have a really good interest rate, at 2.25%, borrowing that at yesterday's dollars. And that's the other thing I like to talk about as well is the arbitrage of your debt, right? A lot of people don't think about that. When you take out a mortgage, 20 years ago at whatever rate you got, you're paying for that house on yesterday's dollars at the value of that home yesterday. The thing is, over that 20-year period, as your house has gone up in value, you're still only paying for it as if it was valued that lower number. You know what I'm saying? So if you were to go rent it out, you're going to definitely make way more on the rent than you did 20 years earlier. So it's one of the things that, I don't look at a mortgage as an evil thing or debt as an evil thing. It's just a matter of how you use that debt. I still use credit cards. I use credit cards all the time to get the points, but I pay them off before the cycle's over and before the interest hits, right? And now, and I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but the credit score companies have changed how they look at that. It used to be looked at not as favorable if you were just using your credit cards and paying them off right away. They wanted you to keep like a 10%-ish balance. That was the trick to get the high credit score. Well, they changed their algorithm on how they calculate credit scores. And now people that are making constant transactions and constantly paying it off, those are very much, those actually add more to your credit score and are much more beneficial than what it used to be in the past, where it was kind of almost a negative, right? So little things like that, I like to do that. And since I started doing the velocity banking, I just watched my credit score because it kind of went down a bit when I hit a bad spot a couple of years ago with the whole thing with the duplex. When I was running into issues there, I was racking up credit cards to make repairs and all this other stuff. And I just watched it just come flying right back really quickly once I started doing this. It was kind of bonkers. So there's different ways to leverage your debt to your advantage. Now, again, those are some of the things I talk about with financial coaching. I don't give financial advice, right? I don't sit here and say, oh, this is what you need to invest in. This is what you need to do. No, I will provide you the tools and the education, and you can go and make an educated decision versus going in there just swinging a bat at a piñata with a blindfold on. I want to take the blindfold off so you can see what you're swinging at and hit your target, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what we do with financial coaching. I am currently onboarding some more coaches because I am kind of stepping back out of that role to focus more on being a full-time real estate agent, because real estate's my passion. I absolutely love it, and helping people, both investors and just people that want to find their forever home out here in Hawaii. It's just become something that's just so fun to me. And fun, and I mean fun like as in passionate. I'm passionate about it, and I want to make sure that I'm still serving people, and that's why I chose this profession to stay in. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, education here at CamaPlan, the sponsor of this podcast, The Road to Financial Freedom, we're huge on education. That's what we do. I mean, we are a self-directed IRA administrator, but we can't tell you what to invest in. We want to give you that education. We want to connect you with those options. And then, yeah, it's the same thing. You can make that educated decision once you've learned about the opportunities. So totally understand where you're coming from in that aspect. And I really want to know, so I've never spoken to anyone that has invested into Hawaii. Do you tend to stick to one of the islands, or do you have real estate on all of them? Tell me a little bit about your thought process with that, and what brings you to a unit of interest.
Sure. And I used to have a limiting belief that investing in Hawaii just isn't really possible because of how expensive it is here. But going to a couple meetups and meeting people that actually really invest out here and flip properties out here and everything kind of just smashed that limiting belief right out the window, because it's just a matter of how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to make it happen? Right now, I stick to Oahu. This is what this is where I work as a real estate agent. Right. I do travel to the other islands, but if I'm doing that, I'm likely on vacation and just kind of trying to get away from the hustle and the bustle for a little bit. Right. Unless I'm going to meet up with somebody, but normally no, that's usually playtime, not work time. But investing in Hawaii, it's a buy and hold area. This is not a place where you're going to buy real estate to cash flow. And one of the things that is kind of difficult right now with where the economy currently is buying an asset that's not cash flowing, because there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. And with 2 negative quarters of the GDP, the textbook definition of a recession, which we're not calling it a recession right now. But, if you look at that and you look historically, that's kind of where we're at. And, you have to be careful. Yeah, any investment's risky, right? But you have to be careful going into something that might not be able to cover its own expenses. Because if you go and buy property and you buy a property that's going to cost, the average property price out here in Hawaii is $1,100,000. That is the average median household price. So if you go buy $1 million home, with today's interest rates, you're talking about a $6,000 mortgage, right? And if you're not renting that house out for $6,000 plus dollars, you are cash flow negative. Yeah. Even if you are renting it out and you're covering your mortgage, you're still cash flow negative, because any expenses that come up or anything else like that, that's all coming out of pocket. So yes, it's nice that somebody be paying down your mortgage, but if you can't afford the other expenses that come with it, you're going to put yourself in a very bad place. So one of the things that I see a lot of people doing right now to kind of hedge against the higher inflation rates, instead of like going with regular rentals, they're doing short-term rentals. The only thing is you have to pay attention to where you're doing that at and what the local laws are. Out here on Oahu, it is very difficult to do short-term rentals. They just passed a law where right now the shortest term rental you can do is 90 days. So a lot of people don't realize that. And they're like, oh, because I'm working with a client right now that wants to buy a condo in Waikiki to do as a short-term rental. So I had to go through and explain this whole process to him. Like, hey, you can get one that's in an area that's zoned to do short-term rentals, but then at the same time, you have to go get a license for it, which, oh, by the way, all the licenses are full and they're not taking any new spots right now. So it might be a couple months. It could be a year. I don't know. But I want you to have all this information up front, because I'm not the real estate agent that's going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll get you a place. And then, oh, you didn't know that you couldn't rent it out? Sorry, that's not me. So I sent him all the information about all that stuff and said, hey, let me know what you think. If this is still something you want to do, I will be happy to help. But here's some other things to consider. And I told him, I said, hey, if you're going to buy something, maybe buy something close to like a hospital or things like that, where you could do 90-day rentals out to traveling nurses. That's another thing that I see people doing. That's another out, right? So no matter what asset you get into, when it comes to real estate, you need to have multiple exit strategies, right? So, hey, is this going to be something I can hold for a little bit and then turn around and sell for a profit if I can't rent it? Or is this something that if I can't rent it, I can do like this 90-day short-term rental and make it work that way where it'll actually cash flow? So you have to crunch the numbers, and you can't fudge the numbers. You have to make sure that it's going to work. The minute you start saying, well, if I do this or I do that, then maybe I'll cash flow enough. No, once you start doing that, that's when all the mistakes are going to happen. That's when everything that you think was going to go right will go wrong. So don't do that. Those are the kind of things that I like to talk about, especially when it comes to real estate. I have what I call these 4 pillars to building wealth. I kind of want to just touch on this because of what you mentioned about education. And education is so important to me. But the 4 pillars are education, mentorship and coaching, networking and relationships, and then action. And by action, I mean taking action. So once you hit those first 3, that 4th one is a must, because you could sit here and educate yourself all day. You can mentor, you can get a mentor, you can get a coach, you can do that all day. You can network and build relationships all day. It's great that you know all these people. But if you don't take action, you're going to be stagnant and just know a lot of people that invest in real estate or that are doing other things that you're not doing. Right. But again, all these things are important. You want to hang out with the people that are doing these things. If you hang out with 5 millionaires, you're going to be the 6th one eventually. And it's just the law of reciprocity. So
Yeah, putting
Yeah.
it out there and it comes to fruition.
Yeah,
Definitely.
sorry, I get long-winded. I'm from Long Island, New York
That's
originally, so
okay.
I talk and talk and talk.
That's
So
okay. I'm from Philly, so that's where, we have that commonality because I'm the same way. I just sometimes they have to go, Ricky, come on, it's move
that
on.
Northeast coast right there,
Yes,
you
yes,
know what good pizza
exactly.
tastes like.
Trust me, we do. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm really glad you touched on the, pricing aspect of it out there because I've been on vacation, twice out there and just, the cost alone for, just going to a 7-Eleven and grabbing, a drink, it's the inflation, even before inflation was a thing. It's so astronomical compared to just, going to your convenience store in your local area here. And it's because, it is a more secluded, it is the paradise, as you said, that you bought into. I was really intrigued about purchasing land or owning property out there. And then you go to tell me that, the shortest time frame for some of these, rentals can be 90 days. Well, that knocks off Airbnb like right away. They don't have that option. I don't, at least that, not that I'm aware of, because who's going to go on vacation for 90 days unless,
Yeah.
that's their goal in life. Then they're going to have, their own special unit that they're looking into.
I mean, there are some spots that are zoned for it,
Mhm.
but you also have to get a license to do it.
Right. And then that license, you can wait time for. So I'm really glad that you're honest with your clients and you give them the pros and cons so that they can make that educated decision, getting back to that again. From a real estate point of view, you own the unit and something, catastrophic happens. You need to get the air conditioner fixed. What is it like for repairs out there? Is that hard to get? You have to I feel like it's not as easily attainable. It is, in our local area, you can't just island hop so easily if someone's on a different island, right?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because I've gone through several things. Even just recently, I had an issue this past Friday where I had on my own property where my main shutoff valve for the water coming in from the town, there was a hole in my pipe and I was losing over a gallon a minute. And I got notified by the Board of Water Supply. They came and put a notice on my mailbox. I didn't see it until like later in the day when I went out to get my mail, and I'm like, "What is this?" And it says, "Oh, check your toilets for leaks. You're losing a gallon a minute." And
Oh,
I said,
wow.
if my toilets are leaking a gallon a minute, my house is flooded. So it's not in my house. So the first place I went and looked is I went and lifted up the hatch and saw, yep, sure enough, it was full of water and it was rushing out, but it was draining, right? Because it
Oh,
follows the
okay.
pipes down. So my biggest fear is that it kind of eroded under the area of my driveway. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is this going to like collapse? So I called Board of Water Supply and say, hey, get over here and cut my water off right now. And then I called my plumber. I couldn't get in touch with them. So I didn't want to do it, but I wound up calling like an emergency plumber to come out. So it cost, I paid, right? It sucked,
Yeah.
but I had to pay to make that happen. And I was going to pay anyway, but I just had to pay a little bit more because it was a
Sure.
Friday night. So I had to pay the weekend rates. It was painful,
Yeah.
but had to catch that stuff. And thankfully I was able to get in touch with somebody to come out here and fix it. And we got water back that night. Now, when it comes to contractors out here, it's hit or miss, just like anywhere else, right? But if you're doing any type of contract work that requires a permit, you need to allocate months of time
Wow.
just to get the permit. Okay. We're talking 60, 90 days plus. So that whole part of it can be very tough to do. I've seen people that will go out and they'll just start the work while they're waiting for a permit. You're running the risk of having them come shut you down. But, there's some contractors like, oh, yeah, no problem. I'll do it. And I'll just wait, while we're waiting for the permit, whatever. And yeah, but you could probably get yourself into some serious trouble by doing that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so when it comes to contractors, it's the same thing as back on the mainland. You want to vet them. You want to make sure that it's, somebody that does good work. You've read the reviews on them. If you know somebody else who's used them in the past, get a honest opinion from them. But there's some great contractors here, and there's some not so great ones, right? But that's going to be anywhere. I did the same thing with my property back in Virginia. I had some issues come up. And the problem was, it was during COVID, there was a military travel ban. So we were not allowed to fly anywhere. So I couldn't go check on my property. Even when I bought it, I didn't. I did everything sight unseen. I had people go out and take pictures and send it to me. I had my property manager go out and take a look at the property and, send me pictures of anything that he thought was concerning. And that's how I was doing business. And I found that because I did not really establish a team, that's one of the things that made it kind of like a pain point for me. So as long as you have a good team, if you're investing in real estate, one of the biggest team members you want to have that's going to be on there is a good property manager and a good general contractor that is going to bring in the right subcontractors to get the job done, somebody that you're going to trust, right? Those relationships are hard to come by. So when you find a good one, lock on as best as you can. Make sure you're giving all the work you can to them because you're going to keep them around. For me, I had the one property and it wasn't enough to really entice people. Now, if I had multiple properties out there, it would be a different story, right? But because I was just getting started out there, like, yeah, this guy, we'll get to him when we get to him. So, and that's just the way of thinking, right? So you got to kind of fight that and work and punch your way through till you get to the point where you have multiple properties and you've got that reputation built up, and those people are like, okay, we're going to go ahead and stick with him because he's getting us paid because we've got work to do.
Yeah, I've come to find that personally. Like, I don't have a property manager. That's me at this point. But yeah, when it is important to have, I've spoken to many people on this podcast already that emphasize have a good team on your side, especially if you're going to be away or out of state or, just over Zoom, whatever it is. I mean, yeah, you definitely want to make sure you have people you can trust that are going to make the right decisions for you for your property. Because in the end, you still own it. It's not theirs. So you want to make sure that they're in line with your ideals and things of that nature. I want to know, because you have 20 years of Navy experience. Do you believe things that you've learned in the Navy help you with what you do today in coaching and purchasing and teaching people how to purchase? Tell me a little bit about, the connection there.
Sure. Yeah, I would definitely say that, especially in my role as a leader in the Navy, right? That's one of the things that's helped me really connect with other people. It was one of the things that I was very passionate about while I was in the Navy was taking care of my sailors, right? And taking care and making sure that they were, had everything that they needed, and, both in their professional life and their personal life, right? So if people were going through hard times, I would talk to them and it'd be like, hey, come on into my office. Let's have a chat. Tell me what's going on, and just go through these coaching sessions, because I feel like a lot of that gets lost, and there's not enough of that in any type of corporate job or even in the military. There's not enough people that will just take the time out of their day to say, hey, you look like you're stressed out. Let's have a conversation. Tell me what's going on. So that was one of the things that I've learned to do. And I'm telling you, it paid off dividends, because I've had some of the most hardworking and, just motivated people working with me in the past. And I think it was all attributed to how I approached the situation, how I approached them. But I also learned how to coach as well. When I was on recruiting duty, I took a professional sales course and I took a professional coaching course as well. And the coaching course was awesome. And it kind of just helped me get a better understanding of how to help push people in a direction that they want to go. They're just kind of feeling uncertain about things, and how to reassure somebody into, what they're doing, that they're making a good decision, right? Because there's so many people out there, whether you're in the military or not, but there's people out there that when they know what they want to do and they have the path, they have that road, right? Like you have the road to financial freedom. They have that road, but then they see oh, there in the distance, I see a cone. Oh, I see a pothole, and I don't want to drive around that cone, and I don't want to have to avoid the pothole. But those are the things that they need help doing. That's where that push and that guidance needs to come from, right? So I talk a lot in metaphors. So, but that's and parables, right? So, but that's kind of the thing that I enjoy about it when I'm coaching somebody or helping them get over those limiting beliefs and overcoming fears. And I think that's one of the qualities that I got after 20 years in the Navy, definitely instilled in me. From the time I was a young E1 in the Navy, I enlisted back in 2002 at the lowest possible rank, and I retired as an officer in the Navy, right, as a lieutenant. And so I did 9.5 years enlisted, 10.5 years as an officer. And some of the greatest leadership traits that I believe that got instilled in me were things I learned when I was a very young sailor in the Navy. And I've had some great leaders teach me some really amazing things. And I've had some really crappy leaders show me what not to do. And the way I looked at that throughout my entire career was, okay, I'm going to take everything as a learning experience. And I'm glad I did, because I think it helped shape me into the person I am today. And I think it's one of the reasons why I have such a passion with helping other people and getting them on the right path to be successful in life, whether it's, being financially independent or whether it's just trying to solve a problem that they just can't tackle. I genuinely enjoy doing that and just being a part of the solution, not part of the problem.
That's great. Yeah, you can tell that you're very patient and you want to help people work through those roadblocks so that they can be, on a successful path. And I feel like you lead that way by showing your hurdles that you jumped over, dealing with, not being able to fly at some points to visit your property, or, just dealing with the pandemic in general when you purchased a home. And, having those real life experiences does help make a coach a better person and more understanding to the people that they're coaching as well, because you can kind of be on the same level as them and they don't feel the intimidation factor, and you can just relate to them on a whole nother level. So I think that's great that you learned all that through the military, and I know that there's many people out there that have learned similar things that you have, and they bring that into their current lives or their next opportunity in life. So that's great. I'm glad that it helped you teach that and helped you figure out what you wanted to do, because I feel like you learned how to be a leader, and you wanted to continue on that path to helping others, whether it was within the Navy or outside. So thank you. And thank you again for your service. We appreciate that here. We always love when people are caring for our country and, just doing what needs to be done to keep us safe. So thank you. Tell me, I guess like you kind of touched on it a little bit, but tell me about a learning opportunity that you've had over the years that really helped, maybe change your path a little bit in real estate, or maybe some wisdom someone input onto you that really helped you guide your path.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a great question. And there's a lot. There's a lot. So I've had a lot of wisdom imparted on me, but I would say probably the best learning thing would be from my own experience, and that would go back to that property in Chesapeake, Virginia, that purchased during the pandemic. And I realized that one of the things that I learned about that is, again, need to have a good team in place, especially if you're doing something from a distance. But at the same time, is that really what I want to do, when it comes to investing in real estate? And from that, I realized I wanted to do something a little bit more passive. So I got into multifamily real estate, right? So I got to invest as a limited partner and basically say, hey, here's my money, and I'll sit back and collect my distributions monthly or quarterly. And in a couple of years, double my money and take that money and reinvest it into something else, right? So that's what I like about that. But there's so many other things you can do. This, for me personally, is what worked best with how busy my schedule was while still being full-time active duty in the Navy, being a realtor on the side, doing the whole thing for, working referrals and everything, being a financial coach on the side, and then running 2 other small businesses on the side as well. Because I also have a podcast editing business as well. And, just doing these things, I realized I don't have this time freedom that I thought I was going to have, right? And now I kind of do, which is nice, but it took a lot of work to get there, and it took me like outsourcing. That was another thing I learned too. Is there's sometimes there comes a point where you have to learn to let go of certain things and outsource them to somebody that maybe can do them better than you, but even if not better than you, but something that they're passionate about. Pay people to do the things that you don't enjoy doing, because you'll get much more enjoyment out of what you do when you start passing off some of those tasks that are less enjoyable to you. But not only less enjoyable, but the time-consuming ones as well, right? Most of the time, if you see my stuff on social media, it's not me posting, it's my VA, right? When you see my podcast trailers and episodes and everything like that, that's not me who edited that. That was my editing team. So there was these little things that I had to learn how to let go. And once you do that, once you figure out that piece of what you need to let go of, what you can outsource, what you should keep, it's going to completely change your life.
Yeah, delegating is very important and taking, time for yourself. So you have to really just make the decision. And sometimes decision making is hard for a lot of us. I know that.
As you can see, I couldn't decide on which to talk
Yeah.
about. I had to give you a couple of them. So.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I totally understand where you're coming from. But I mean, that almost sounds like a financial freedom, journey is just finding that time and freedom to do what you love. So you figured out how to delegate and who to give a task to that would, free you up from having to do that and give you more time back. So I love that. And that ties in so well with the road to financial freedom, because that's what we're aiming for here is to teach people how to really enjoy their life and have passive income. Yeah, but do what you want to do, what makes you happy. So, Mike, I just want to know, do you have any like last minute words of wisdom that you can impart onto our audience, or a learning method that, could really help them getting involved in real estate or investing in general?
Sure. I will impart this on you all, and what my belief of what financial freedom truly is. Okay, and it's more than just financial freedom. Financial freedom to me is time freedom. It's getting that independence. It's getting your life back so that you can do the things that you want to do, the things that you're passionate about. And if you decide with that time freedom to continue to work or do something that you're passionate about, like a passion project or anything like that, if it's something you truly enjoy and you consider it work, you probably shouldn't consider it work, because it's something that you are enjoying, and if it's paying you as well, that's even better if you're getting an active income from it. But once you get yourself to that point where you can make that choice, whether you want to do it or not, because it's something you're passionate about, that is when you've reached like that next level where you are truly free. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why my tagline for Average Joe Finances is beat debt, build your wealth, and control your future. That's financial independence is going to be
Yeah.
the way that will get you there.
Well, I think that is some wonderful information to pass along. Definitely control your future. That's a key factor here. Well, I just want to say thank you again, Mike, so much for being on this podcast today. I want to thank our sponsor, CamaPlan. And of course, you can reach out to Mike Cavaggioni, Average Joe Finances. You can find him on Instagram, all over socials as well. All his information will be in the show notes below in the links. And then if you want to find out more information about a self-directed IRA, please go to CamaPlan.com, where you can request a consult with an expert, view our media library of webinars or podcasts. You can also open an account. So thanks again for listening. And remember to like, follow, and share our podcast, The Road to Financial Freedom, to continue with us on this journey on the path of finding success. Thanks again, Mike. I had a great time talking with you.
It was a blast. Aloha.
Aloha.